Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie,
And I'm Shauna.
and today we bring you another pre-con deep dive into one of the new Cabaretti commanders. There's 5 of them, so we're working our way through, doing a bit of a review and a deep dive into these things. In this video, we're going to break down the cards that are in this deck. We're going to talk to you about what we think the deck is meant to do, how to maybe use some of the cards wisely, and what some of the strategy is, in our opinion, meant to be for this. And if you wait to the end, we have some tweaks that we would offer for this deck. Suggestions. We'd, of course, love to hear what you think. So definitely comment or send us a shout out and let us know how you would make this deck better if it needs to be better. But first, we need to tell you what this deck is and how it is meant to work. So, Shauna, who's our commander and what is this deck meant to do?
This is the Maestros Massacre deck, which is all about killing lots of things. No. It's got our vampire assassin commander named Angelo the Painter. He's just doing some artwork. His mana cost is 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red. And his abilities are he's a 1/3 with the death touch, so he doesn't do much other than sit there. But he has the first instant or sorcery spell you cast each turn has casualty 2. So casualty means that you can sacrifice a creature, in this case, that has a power of 2 or less. No, 2 or more, sorry. And then if you do that, you get to copy that instant or sorcery. So the idea of this deck is to get a whole bunch of instances and sorceries copied and do lots of damage. So what I find happens with this deck is you're trying to make lots of tokens that you can sacrifice and swing in with as well. So there's also some life drain as well, based on creatures dying. So it's all around that whole I'm going to kill everything kind of
Including my own
thing,
stuff.
including my own stuff. So, it's fun.
That's what vampires do, don't you
That's
know?
right. That's right. So I'm going to let Leslie tell you about, no, yeah, I'm going to let Leslie tell you about the deck breakdown because she's brilliant that
The guts, and the glory.
way.
So we like to tell you a little bit about the stats of this deck, and the first thing is the mana
Mm-hmm.
value. We have a bit of a wall of mana value. It doesn't show the typical curve. There's a lot of 4, 5, 6, and 7 mana cost items, so there is a higher
Mm-hmm.
mana value. But we have 5 at 1, 14 at 2, 11 at 3, 14 at 4, 7 at 5, 10 at 6, and 2 that have an X mana cost, which you're probably going to cast for higher mana value, but they give you some options. When you look at the Maestro Massacre color breakdown, though, we have a fairly even distribution of colors aside from red. There's a lot more multicolored cards in this deck. We only have 8 red, 16 black, 16 blue, and 11 multicolor. And then, of course, we have 12 colorless. Those are your artifacts and or usually mana dorks and things like that. But in this deck, there are more than that. So we'll discuss that when we get there. As far as card types go, as I said, 12 artifacts. We only have 15 creatures in this deck, so it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty low for a commander deck. We have 5 enchantments and we have 31 sorceries and instants. So this deck is really, I think, the hope is that this deck is all about just casting your instants and sorceries and using them to then be copied or things like that. So as Shauna
Mm-hmm.
was saying. When we break our decks down, we like to evaluate them based on the type of card, and we use a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of a formula. Shauna, why don't you kind of explain that?
Yeah, so the formula we use when we're evaluating seems to be what Wizards uses as well, because for the most part, their decks follow this formula. It's just a way to evaluate your decks and see if you have enough of different things that you need in the deck to win the game. So in this case, of course, you have your commander. That's your first card. You have for ramp, you have about 15 of those. Removal, we always joke about you needing removal, and there's 15 of those. There in this formula, there is 13 card draw. You want to make sure you have lots of cards in your hand, lots of options. And then high impact cards, about 12 of those. Those are cards that are going to win you the game or swing it in your favor at the very least. And then the other on theme cards that go with the theme of the deck or help you win, help your win cons happen. Those are about 10 of those. And then we think about 34 lands. Usually there's a few extra lands, but we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah, definitely. So that'll give you a nice balanced mid-range deck. 2 to 3 card difference in any of those numbers is totally fine. And of course, there's some decks that just go completely over to theme. Um, so yeah. First section that we're going to discuss is mana ramp and mana generators. Our formula calls for 15, and we didn't put the number in there. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. There's 11 in this deck. The first one is Cormella Glamour Thief, legendary creature, vampire rogue. So that's great right off the bat. It's a 2/4 with haste, but this one has pay 1 to add 3, one of each color. So those are, of course, the Maestro colors. Spend this mana only to cast instants and sorceries. That's okay. You have 31 of them in this deck. And when Cormella Glamour Thief dies, you return up to 1 target instance or sorcery from the graveyard to your hand. So you can bring stuff back. So this is a nice little card, but for the most part, you're going to use it as a mana generator to cast those instants and sorceries, which is why we put it in this section.
Yeah, and because it has haste, you can do that tap ability on turn 1.
Right.
So
yeah, thanks.
I actually forgot to do that when I was playing with this. I was like, oh, right, I could have done that right away. So, because that's 3 mana that's available to you with her.
Yeah.
So it was kind of foolish of me not to do that. So then we have Drawn from Dreams, which is a sorcery. It's a big rampy kind of card that every blue deck wants. It's for 2 and 2 blue. It says, look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. It's a great way to dig through that top part of your deck and get what you need and set the rest aside for use later.
And then we have Audacious Swap for 4 is an instant. This one has casualty too. So as Shauna mentioned before, this means that is it a May ability, casualty?
Yes, it's a May.
So you may cast it for a casualty. So you can sacrifice a creature, power of 2 or more. The owner of target non-enchantment permanent shuffles it into their library, then exiles the top card of their library. If it's a land card, they put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, they may cast it without paying its mana cost. So this is a good one to use on yourself, Shauna.
Yes, it is.
You don't have to. So you can use it on somebody else's creature if it's like a really big, terrible, something that's really causing you issues. It'll get rid of it. They exile it. Yeah, they get to turn over a card. If it's a land, they put it on. They
How
get
bad
that.
could it be?
They can cast that. Maybe they don't have any mana, and so they can't cast it. So that could be good for you as well. So, but
you
risky.
Don't have to pay for it. You don't have. They don't have to pay for it. That was the problem. That's what I forgot.
Still, it is risky. It is risky because they could get something even worse than what they had on the battlefield. So you're playing but if it's you, then you can cast something for free. So it's probably best to play that for yourself.
It's an interesting card.
Shauna learned this by
I learned that the hard
trial.
Yeah, trial and big error. Then we've got our what are they called? Mana rocks coming up here. So we've got the Arcane Signet, which is the new commander staple. For 2, it's add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. Then we've of course got the Commander Sphere, which can be same thing, tap for any color, but this one you can sacrifice it and draw a card, which is kind of nice.
And then we have 3 signets, Dimir, Izzet, and Rakdos. They all tap for their guild colors, but you have to pay 1 to get 2, which is fine. I usually, when I think about it, I just think of the land and that as those 2 colors. So you're still tapping 2 things to get 2 mana.
And then another nice commander staple that you get with this deck is Felwar Stone. For 2, you can tap for any mana that your opponents produce. So that might be helpful for you as well.
And everyone loves Soul Ring. These are the only way to get them, I think, is to buy Commander decks. They
Yeah,
didn't put it in
yeah. You
Commander
can't even
Legends, did
buy them
they?
anymore.
Maybe they'll put it in Commander Legends. I really think they need to, so people can just
Can't remember
build
if they
and
did or not. I don't think
and
so.
play with their own decks rather than having to buy a Commander deck just to get a
Hmm.
Soul Ring. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Wayfarer's Bauble. That's another little, another common card that's hard to get because it's a 1 mana cost artifact that you can tap, pay 2 and tap it and sacrifice and go looking for your basic land card. So yeah, people like that one. Rampy, rampy.
awesome. And then we have our next section, which is our removal section. Arguably, I've been able to introduce this section so far in all of our videos, and it is the most important section in my opinion. The formula calls for 15. This deck has 15, so right on par there.
Yeah, yeah.
The first one is Parness, the Subtle Brush. This one is for 2
She's so
and
pretty.
Maestro color. She is gorgeous, isn't she? She's a 4/4 legendary creature, vampire wizard. So she could be your commander, this one. When you or a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, opponents control counter that spell or ability unless the player pays for life. And when you copy a spell, up to one target opponent may also copy that spell. They may choose new targets for that copy. So allows you to make some friends, which is always a good thing in Commander. You can deal with that person where the group feels is a problem, and make some friends along the way. So
Yeah. Then we have another wizard too. This one is a Sinister Concierge for 1 and a blue, a 2/1 little human wizard. I really like the art on this one too. When it dies, which the 2/1 is pretty easy, you may exile it and put 3 time counters on it. If you do, exile up to 1 target creature and put 3 time counters on it. Each card exiled this way that doesn't have suspend gains suspend.
mm-hmm.
So suspend lets you, oh my gosh, I got to remember how that works. So I believe it lets you
You remove a
put,
time counter each
yeah,
upkeep.
yeah. And then once those time counters are removed, you can play that card.
Yeah, because
So
you've
it's
already
just,
paid the mana cost. It's just because the
mm-hmm.
mana cost is so cheap, you're putting that suspend counter
Yeah,
on it, and then once the suspend counter's on off or off of it, then it enters the battlefield.
yeah. So this is a good card to use for your, because its power is 2. So you can use it for your copying spells like the whole
Mm-hmm.
casualty thing and do it again later.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, for 4, is a 3/3 with flying and haste, which is always a good thing. At the beginning of each end step, which means your turn as well as everybody else's turn, if a creature card left your graveyard this turn, target Phoenix you control deals damage equal to its power to any target. And when another Phoenix you control dies, you may cast Cyrix, Carrier of the Flame, from your graveyard. So you have the ability to bring it back. There are other Phoenixes in this deck. Arguably, probably not enough to make this
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
a thing that would happen on a regular basis. So that might be something you want to consider. But doing damage based on its power is great, and it's to
Yeah.
any target. So that's why it's in the removal,
Yeah.
because you can use it to get rid of things right off the bat. It's 3, but if you decide to buff it up, put some equipment on it, then you can make it more than that.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very special Phoenix. It's another Phoenix that's included. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Mm-hmm.
So this card, I love the flavor on this card. To make an example, I also love playing this card.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, for 4, sorcery, each opponent separates the creatures they control into 2 piles. For each opponent, you choose one of their piles. Each opponent sacrifices the creatures in the chosen pile. The piles can be empty. Yeah, so I don't know how well this would work for copying it, but it might just cause some problems for some people. So it's kind of fun. And you might
Well,
want to
no,
copy it,
I
depending on
mean,
how many
copying
creatures
it
are
would
out
be
there.
good because you would do that. The second instance would trigger
Mm-hmm.
first. They would separate,
Cut in
and
half.
you would choose, and then they would have to separate again, and then you would
Yep.
choose. So
Yeah.
it's a fun card.
Yeah.
Of course, Xander. Xander is the king
Oh,
of the
Leslie doesn't like
maestros.
Xander.
Xander's pack. 4 and 2 black is got casualty 2 on this card, so you can sacrifice a creature if you want. Each opponent exiles the top card of their library. You may cast spells from among these cards this turn. If you cast a spell this way, pay life equal to the spell's mana value rather than paying its mana cost. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this deck has some decent life link in it and life gain. And if not, it could because you're sacrificing creatures. So there are cards that will help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you can then pay life instead of having to pay its mana cost, which is actually super great. Actually, I think you have to pay. Is it May or
You may can.
then you pay life? So
Yeah.
you can't choose to use mana for this. You have to use your life for this, but you get the choice of whether you cast it or not.
Yeah.
So and it's removal because you're removing it from their deck. They can't cast it, and you get to do it. So.
Exactly. Exactly. Then the Maestro's Confluence card, it's for 3, and then the Maestro's Colors. And you can choose 3 of these options that are on this card. You may choose the same mode more than once, which is handy. So you have the option of returning target monocolored instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Or you can goad each creature target player controls. So I copied this one last night and returned 4 spells from my graveyard, and then did the goading thing, and I did the -3/-3. So it was very useful.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great.
it was a big removal, plus helping me get more stuff in my hand again.
Another big removal spell, of course, blue done doing what blue does best,
Mm-hmm.
returning things to
Mm-hmm.
people's hands, making them cast again, using their resources up. So 4 and 2 blue is a sorcery. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. Good old River's Rebuke.
Mm-hmm. Zyndersplit's Judgment for 4 and a blue. It's a little sorcery that says for each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend creates a token that's a copy of a creature they control. Each foe returns a creature they control to its owner's hand. So you get to choose who's your friends and who are your foes. So this is another political card that Leslie
Yeah.
gets so much fun out of.
I love it. That's great. And you said that very well. I am so impressed with you this morning. I am still drinking coffee. The next one is Hex, another really high mana value card. This is a 6 mana cost card. Destroy 6 target creatures. So 1 mana for every creature that you destroy. That's actually really good value. You're going to use this
Mm-hmm.
as a semi board wipe, which is better in Commander a lot of times because if there's too many
Yep.
board wipes, the game goes on way too long. So this allows you to just target the ones that you need to get rid of.
Very fun. Reign of the Pit for 4 and 2 black. It's a sorcery, and each player sacrifices a creature. You get to create an XX black demon creature token with flying, where X is the total power of the creature sacrificed this way. Fun,
I
fun.
mean, if they're smart, they're going to sacrifice their 1/1s and then you only get a 3/3. That could
But,
happen,
yes,
but
yes.
if they don't have anything small to
Exactly.
sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
all those counter decks, the broker deck. Sever the Bloodlines for 4 is a sorcery that allows you to exile target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature. So in Commander, this one is probably not going to be great unless you're playing against someone who has a lot of tokens or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the token cards that people have multiple copies of, or if they have, made copies of their creatures, then you're going to choose that name and they have to get rid of all of their elf tokens or
Yep.
whatever.
Exactly.
It has flashback, so you can cast it again. You do have to pay 7 to cast it again from your graveyard, but you can cast it again, and of course, you might be able to copy it. So.
Exactly. 2 different kinds of cards. Then we've got Chain Reaction for 2 and 2 red. This is a card I'm kind of iffy on, most
Mm-hmm.
because I play creature decks. And Chain Reaction deals X damage to each creature, including yours, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. This is a board wipe for sure. Pretty much always.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I like it very much.
Yeah. Of course, in blue, black, and red, you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of enchantment removal. So this is a great one. Feed the Swarm for 2. Destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You have versatility there, whatever you need. You do lose life equal to the permanent's mana value, though. So
Mm-hmm.
just be cognizant of that. Sometimes, you know what? Your life is a resource. It's worth it.
Yeah. Bedevil for 2 black and a red. This is an instant that says destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. You're going to want this card.
Yeah.
Very handy.
Rite of the Raging Storm.
Oh my
3 and
gosh.
2 red. So nice little 5 mana cost enchantment. Creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. What's that, you say? At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player creates a 5/1 red elemental creature token named Lightning Rager. It has trample, haste, and at the beginning of the end step, they have to sacrifice that creature. Who couldn't want that? Like, really, I've used this card in a few decks that come in some precons, and it's great because they don't necessarily hate you for giving them a 5/1, because they have something that they can attack with on their turn. I don't think it has goad or anything like that, so they don't have to if they don't want to. So it's not forcing them to do anything they don't want to, but it gives them options. It's kind of nice. I like it.
Then we're into the card draw tutors section. And the formula calls for 13, and the deck has
13.
13. Yeah. So we are doing pretty good here with this. We've got the Dogged Detective. This is one of the new cards for 1 and a black. It's a 2/1. So again, that's nice with the casualty too. This guy says when he enters the battlefield, surveil 2. So surveil is where you look at the top 2 cards and decide whether you want to keep them on the top of your deck or put them in your graveyard. So another way to sift through, you can pick 1 or 2 or whichever, none. And whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you may return the Dogged Detective from your graveyard to your hand. So he's going to come back because pretty much guaranteed that everybody in Commander has card draw. So he's going to come back. He's a little human rogue that you can keep using over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Damnable Pact. This is one that you're probably going to use on yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
if someone it's near the end of the game and you have enough mana, you could kill someone with this. So X and 2 black, you're going to target player draws X cards and loses X life. So X, for those of you who are new to Magic, maybe don't know what that means, that's however much other mana you want. So you're going to tap your 2 black, those are out of the way, and then whatever you have left in your mana pool, you can tap. It can be treasures, it can be artifacts, it can be land. You just tap whatever colors you want, and whatever that count is what X equals. So
Mm-hmm.
if that happens to be 7, you draw 7 cards, you lose 7 life.
Mm-hmm. Copy that.
Mm-hmm.
Deep Analysis for 3 and a blue. It's a little sorcery that says target player draws 2 cards. This is really, really handy, especially if you're copying it. And then it's got a flashback cost as well. So drawing lots of cards with this.
And ponder. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle. Draw a card. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you're looking at your cards, they're not really what you want, that's when you would shuffle. Otherwise, you get the knowledge and you can kind of stack your deck to know what's coming. So and you can copy this in all of these.
Yes.
Think about, I could copy
Yes.
this and it's only 1
Yep.
mana. So
Preordained, similar kind of idea for 1 only. It's a sorcery that you get to scry to, then draw a card. Scrying lets you look at those top 2 cards, in this case 2, right? And then you get to put them on the bottom of your library or keep it on top in the order that you want. Same thing.
and then body count for 3 has spectacle 1. And then you can draw a card for each creature that died under your control this turn. So
Mm-hmm.
spectacle is if you do damage, then you
Yep.
can cast it for spectacle cost instead. So this would be something you might use on your second main phase after
Mm-hmm.
combat, or if you've done direct damage to someone and then this spell only costs you 1. Otherwise, it costs you 3. So there's 2 options there. If you need to hard cast it, you can, but you can get it for cheaper if you need.
Yeah. And Dig Through Time. This was one of the guys was surprised that this was included in this deck. It's a pretty awesome card for 6 and 2 blue. It's an instant, which seems kind of expensive, but it has Delve on it. So Delve means that you can exile cards out of your graveyard to cover the colorless cost. So this could potentially be only 2 blue if you exile 6 cards out of your graveyard. With this card, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So it is a very powerful card.
Yeah.
Potential.
And Mystic Confluence, another great card for 5, because you're going to choose 3 of these modes. You can also choose the mode more than once. So you can counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. You could decide to do that 3 times. Now they have to pay 9. You can return target creature to its owner's hand. You can choose to do that 3 times, or you can draw 3 cards. So lots of options with that one. It does have the card draw in there, so that's why it's in this section, but there's other options for you if you need.
A little chat. This is a fun little card. For 1 in the blue, it is an instant that has casualty 1, so kill off a little token. Who cares, right? Then you get to look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. Great little card.
Now, I'm just going to
What?
correct me if I'm wrong. If you have your commander out, then all of your instants and sorceries have casualty. Your first one each turn has casualty 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something to remember as we're talking through this, because that's how you're going to copy these, but you do have to have creatures. So that's another thing to remember as we go through this. You have to have things to sacrifice in order to do this. So Maestro's Charm is one of the charms that just came out with this set. I love the charms in this set. It's Maestro colors. It's an instant. You can choose one. You can either look at the top 5 cards of your library, put 1 of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Or nice. Maestro Charm deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So very versatile. Nice. You're tutoring, you're looking at your cards, you're maybe just gaining some life if you need to, or you're going to do 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So it's also removal. It could be in the removal section, this one. So this is, I think, the best charm that we have.
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody thinks that. Fact or Fiction for 3 and a blue. This is a little instant that says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. You get to put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So you get to choose. Your opponent figures out what the piles are, and then you choose which one you want to keep. And kind of political.
Yeah. And this next one is one of Shauna and I's favorite cards. First of all, we are on this card. We are librarians and proud of it. Here's our librarian frantically searching the library through some books. So frantic search for 2 and a blue. You get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. So you're searching through your deck and just keeping in your hand what you need. But this one allows you to untap up to 3 lands. So essentially, because it costs 3 and you can untap 3 lands, this is free to cast.
Woohoo! It's very fun. Cryptic Pursuit. It's a fun new card for 2 blue and a red. It's an enchantment that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, manifest the top card of your library. So manifest is you get to put that card face down on the battlefield and make it a 2/2 that you then can pay the cost of whenever. So, but this one, in this case, whenever a face down creature you control dies, exile it. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast that card until end of your next turn. So it's makes a little creature for you out of your instances and sorceries that you can sacrifice and play later. So you know what it is. Your opponents don't know what it is. Do they kill it? I don't know.
Who knows?
Could be risky.
So our next section is our high impact cards. Our formula says you should have probably around 12. This deck only has 9, in our opinion. So it's a little low on the high impact, but some of the synergy that comes with the other cards might make up for that. So you can decide and tweak as you
Mm-hmm.
need. This Phoenix is the one that we were kind of thinking might
Yes.
go well with the other card before. So first I'll explain what it is. Rekindling Phoenix for 4 is a 4/3. It's flying. When it dies, you create a 0/1 red elemental creature token. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice this creature and return target named Rekindling Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until the end of turn. So it is a Phoenix that keeps dying and coming back. And if it dies, sorry, it can just keep coming back and keep coming back. You will probably want to swing with it, be aggressive with it, because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if it dies and you want it to die. Because remember, the other card had benefits when
Mm-hmm.
Phoenixes died. So,
Right.
excuse me.
Bless you.
So this is a nice one that goes really well with that other Phoenix, and together they make really kind of a high impact engine that goes on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then we have Kess, the Dissident Mage, for 1 and the Maestro's Colors, a little 3/4 human wizards. This is another wizard. That might be important. Has flying. During each of your turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, you exile it instead. So you want to be careful which ones that you do this with because you don't get to use them again. So,
Mm-hmm.
using your graveyard a little bit. But a 3/4 flyer for 4 is nothing to shake a fist at, that's for sure.
Exactly. Army of the Damned for 8, 5, and 3 black pips. But it's
Mm-hmm.
great because you get to create 13 tap 2/2 black zombie creature
Yes.
tokens. It has flashback for 9, so you get another 13 tap. So we're talking about being able to sacrifice 2
Yeah.
power and up. Here's your little 2/2 zombies that you can just sacrifice. It doesn't matter. There's your army that you can start doing things with.
Mm-hmm. Call the Skybreaker. It's for 5 and the blue or red hybrid mana, 2 of those. You can create a 5/5 blue and red elemental creature token with flying and has retrace. So you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a land in addition to paying its other costs. So it's a great one to play twice and
Mm-hmm.
copy because 5/5 flyers are pretty dang awesome.
Yeah. Twinning staff, if you would copy a spell 1 or more times, instead copy it that many times plus an additional time. So this is just out on your battlefield and gives you that ability. So now you're getting your copies 3 times. Think of that if you copied Army of the Damned. You may choose new targets for the additional copy if you need to. You can pay 7 and tap it and copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. So now, if you don't have anything to sacrifice to copy or anything like that, it does give you options to use for the mana to get those copies in and automatically get 3 when you use it.
Yeah. And then Lightning Greaves is a little high impact dude because it is a 2 mana cost artifact that gives your equip creature haste and shroud, and equip is 0. Everyone loves this card
Mm-hmm.
because, yeah, suddenly you've got trouble on the board. This is one that you swing in with.
So, for some of maybe our newer players, can you
Oh,
explain Shroud?
okay. So shroud is you or your opponents can't target that creature, so it protects that creature from being targeted
So a
for
little bit
sure.
different than hexproof, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you get into the, oh yeah, this has shroud, I can't target it
Yeah,
either.
you can't
So
target it
I forget
either.
it all the time, and I've been playing forever, which is
Yeah.
why I mentioned it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I know what shroud does. It's not that I don't know, I just forget. So
Yeah.
extravagant replication for 4 and 2 blue. Again, another really big mana cost card, but it's an enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of another target non-land permanent you control.
This is
Doesn't
really
have to be a
helpful.
copy of another token. It can be a copy of any permanent you control. Again, this will help you get your creatures onto the battlefield that you can use, building your army that you can then sacrifice.
Yeah, it's very useful. It has helped me a lot. Then we have Determined Iteration for 1 and a red. It's an enchantment as well. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you populate. So the token created this way gains haste, and you have to sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So it again helps you get some tokens that you could sacrifice and or attack with. So it really helps you with that.
Mm-hmm. And now you're doubling up on your impact because you have double
Mm-hmm.
vision on the battlefield, which is a
Yep.
5 mana cost enchantment. This is a great one, really great one for this deck.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you
Mm-hmm.
cast your first instance or sorcery spell each turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So remember, your spells have casualty as well as you can copy this. So you don't have to be like, "Oh, well, it doesn't count because it's already being copied." You can copy it and twice
Again.
because you can use your casualty to copy it as well as automatically get the double visions copy. And then if you have twinning staff, you have an additional copy. So now you have 4 copies of that spell that you just
Uh-huh.
cast for 1 mana cost. So use those. This is we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but this is probably a deck you want to play if you've like been playing a little while and understand how to kind of use your triggers and
Yeah.
stack things up. This is not a deck I would enjoy playing because it's too much thinking for me.
It's very fun if you like
But I
planning and doing
admire
that kind of
all
stuff.
of you that love this type of deck.
Yeah, yeah. The blue players. Let's face it. Okay, so then we have other cards on theme. Our win conditions are supporting cards. It's going to help us win the game, but not necessarily high impact ones that we think. So the formula calls for 10. This one has, looks
14.
like 14. So quite a few in here. So, they could be in other places too, but maybe not so much. These are the ones that you might want to think about swapping out or doing other things with. We've got the Spellbinding Soprano for 1 and a red. It's a 2/2, and whenever it attacks, instants and sorceries spells you cast this turn cost 1 less to cast. So that helps you out with casting some of those ones that you want to copy. You have to attack with it though. And then we have Encore for 3 and a red, and I believe Encore just lets you play it again from the graveyard. I think.
Yeah,
I
it's a
can't
keyword
remember.
ability.
Yeah,
And I believe, let's see, it's an activated
double
ability that
check.
can be activated only if the creature that has it is in your graveyard. It only appears on non-legendary creatures. You can pay the creature's encore cost and exile it from the graveyard to create a number of token copies of it equal to the
Right, it's
number
a
of
token.
opponents. Equal to the number of opponents.
Oh, 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 oh. Okay, so
So
yeah.
that's pretty
So you
good.
want to attack with this one.
Because
And
you want
then
to
you might
get
want to sacrifice it with an instant, right? Like you can play an instant.
this
You
is
might
a
not
two
even be
mana
worrying
cost, so
about doing
casualty,
combat
right?
damage. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. An instant that, yeah.
Sacrifice
So,
this for its casualty cost, get it in the graveyard, and then
yeah,
bring it back for its encore cost and have that many
yeah.
copies of it. Now, your spells cost 3
Yeah.
less to cast because you had 3 opponents, right?
Right. Yes,
Blood
yes.
Soaked Champion for 1. It's a 2/1.
Yeah.
It can't be blocked. It's nice little unblockable. It has raid. So if you cast this after you've done combat damage, then you get to pay it for 2 instead. Well, why would you want to do that? Because you can return Blood Soaked. Oh no, this is if it's in the
It's
graveyard. But
yeah.
return Blood Soaked Champion from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only if you attack this turn. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's died or you sacrificed it to the casualty. You
Mm-hmm.
have a way of bringing it back and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to sacrifice it again. So this is one of those things that you're going to put on the battlefield and you're going to continually use it to copy your spells.
Yeah, definitely. And or be aggressive with.
Yeah.
Puppeteer Cleek, I guess, Cleek, for
Mm-hmm.
3 and 2 black. It's a 3/2. It's flying, a fairy wizard, so another wizard. When it enters the battlefield, put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. At the beginning of your next turn, or next end step, sorry, you exile it. And this has persist. So when this creature dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, you get to return it to the battlefield, but put a -1/-1 counter on it. So you get to do this twice. So it's a great removal. Well, from their graveyard. If they're playing stuff from their graveyard that you were like, I don't want you to bring that back. This is the card to use for that. And you get to use their card, which could be bad.
So Skyclave Shade, another great one that you can bring
Mm-hmm.
back from your graveyard. You cast it for 2. Um, and it's a nice little 3/1. It does have a kicker cost, which is great. You can pay an additional 3 mana.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, it enters with 2/1/1 counters on it. So you maybe you want a 5/3 instead of a
Mm-hmm.
3/1. but it has landfall. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if this card is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn.
Yep.
So another great one that you can sacrifice, get it into your graveyard so you can copy your spells with your casualty, but you can bring it back as soon as you play a land, and then use it again because it's super cheap. It's only 2.
Yeah. Then we've got Woe Strider for 2 and a black. It's a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get to make a little goat, a little 0/1 goat. And if you sacrifice another creature, you get to scry 1. And it has an escape cost of 3 and 2 black. And escape is you can exile, in this case, 4 other cards from your graveyard and pay that cost to play this card. And when it escapes, though, it gets 2+1 counters on it. So later on in the game, it becomes a very big, aggressive kind of dude that lets you do some work.
Yeah. So Squee the Immortal for 3, it's a 2/1. Again, another one that you can kind of see how this deck is kind of building up now that you see our support cards. You may cast Squee the Immortal from your graveyard or from exile, so it doesn't matter what they do to this guy, he's just going to keep coming back. So you can use him for your casualty to copy those spells. You can use him as a blocker if you need. He's very versatile, and he's got a nice, pretty rock.
Yeah. Then we've got a Goblin Electromancer. This is a really helpful Spells Matter kind of creature. For a blue and a red, it's a 2/2 little dude that makes your instances and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. Very, very good for this deck.
Yeah. Flawless Forgery for 5 has casualty 3, and you can exile a target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. Copy that card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. And if you use the casualty spell or casualty on this, just a kind of note, you are copying this spell, not the spell that you're targeting. So then you get to target another spell in the graveyard. So
exactly. Then we have Clone Legion. This is a really, really useful card for 7 and 2 blue. So it's not easy to get out. But if you do and you copy it, for each creature target player controls, you create a token that's a copy of that creature. This was finally a way for me to get some creatures out. I stole their, I didn't really steal them, but I copied all of their good stuff. So all of their enter the battlefield triggers happened too, which was really useful for me as well. It was very good.
Dread Summons. Now, this could arguably be a high impact card. Now, it is fairly expensive, but it is, well, it should be expensive because it's 2 mana value is actually what its mana value is, but it's one of those X cards that gives you options. So each player mills X cards for each creature card put into the graveyard. This way you create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So again, you're going to be creating a bunch of zombies that you can then use and have your army being built up, hopefully. And if you copy this, you copy the X value as well. So when you copy a spell that's already on the stack, you copy it exactly. You don't get to choose X differently.
Talron's Invocation. I really like this little card. It's for 2 and 2 blue. It is create 2/2 blue Drake creature tokens with flying. It's just a really useful card. Copying that makes it even better.
And Waste Management. This is a nice removal card, actually. I love the artwork on this card. For 2 and a black, you can exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. However, this has a kicker cost of 4. So if you pay an additional 4, you can instead exile target player's graveyard, so the entire graveyard, and then you create a 2/2 black rogue creature token for each creature card exiled this way. So if it's later in the game, you have, enough mana to cast this. Early in the game, you get 2, you kind of get your engine going, so it has some versatility. The reason it's in kind of support rather than removal or high impact is because you might not have anybody that you're playing with when any creatures in their graveyard yet. So that's sitting in your hand, not doing anything.
Yeah. Then we have this really awesome artwork here, Smuggler's Buggy for 4. It's a little artifact vehicle that has Hideaway 4. So Hideaway is you get to look at the top 4 cards, in this case, of your library and pick one and hide it underneath the smuggler's buggy in this case. So that lets you dig through your cards and have, and again, your opponent doesn't know what it is, but you do. Whenever Smuggler's Buggy deals combat damage to a player, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. If you do, you have to put the Smuggler's Buggy in its owner's hand. Oh well, that means you get to do it again.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Woohoo. Exactly.
Yes, it's fun.
And then Mimic That for 3. I love this card. It has imprint. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you may exile that card. That includes your opponent's cards. So you can choose, I'm going to put that card under this card. If you do, return each other card exiled this way to its owner's graveyard. So basically they're just saying, hey, you can stick something under here, but you can only have one thing at a time under here. Once you put a new thing under there, that other thing has to go back to that person's graveyard. And then you can pay 3 and tap Mimic That to create a token that's a copy of the card exiled with Mimic That. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So you're continually paying 3 to make something that gains haste and you can swing with. This would be a good thing too, to if you're, let's say, well, you wouldn't want to use Rekindling Phoenix because then it would be exiled and it wouldn't just keep coming back. But
Yeah.
that big thing that keeps bothering you or whatever, you can just keep creating it and gaining benefits. Or if you just needed some littler creatures that you could sacrifice, that's fine too. So
It's crazy. It's crazy. So this we won't get into the lands too much, but this deck has the formula calls for 34. It has 37, which is quite a few. It does have lots of really good non-basic cards in it. So do make sure you go through those and evaluate whether you want to keep them in there or not. I was able to add the Maestro's awesome card. I forget what it's called. To the land to this one, which is an expensive card, but that was kind of nice. So that's where you might want to do some tweaking and cleaning that up a little bit. Speaking of tweaking, we're going to now get into our tweaks for this deck that we think might help it be even better. I'll let Leslie do the first one.
Okay. I will do that.
Thanks.
So this deck has all kinds of course copying. As we talked about, there might be less creatures than we would desire in this deck. So we either need more instant sorceries that create token copies and things like that, or less that are, I don't know, it's tough because you have to like have enough card draw, you have to have enough removal. So it is a fairly balanced deck as it is, but you're going to have to play with it. All of these tweaks are just suggestions. You wouldn't change out and put all of these cards in. You would want to pick and choose what route you wanted to go. But the first one that we thought would be good is the Maestro's Ascendancy. All of the houses have this little ascendancy that's not included in the commander decks, and so we thought that they should go in the commander decks because they're great. This one has once during each of your turns, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard by sacrificing a creature in addition to paying its other costs. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. So now you have this on the battlefield. You can use your graveyard as your hand, which is awesome. So this kind of gives that flashback or that encore, not encore, but it gives your flashback automatically at the same cost that is on the card without having to pay for it. So
yeah, it's a great way to replay them. And another way to replay cards, I love my Jaya. This is Jaya Ballard, her 2 Planeswalker card. That's 2 and 3 red. A little tricky to play if you don't have all the red out there, but you will. And then she has a couple abilities that are really, really awesome. All of them. +1, you can add 3 red mana, and you have to use that for instances and sorceries, which you have lots of. So that helps you with your casting those. Or you can use this to get rid of your hand stuff. So you can +1 and discard up to, how many is it? I can't quite read it. 3 cards. I couldn't remember. 3 cards from your hand, and then you get to draw that many cards, which is really helpful. And if you're discarding stuff that you want to play later, you could do her -8 ability, which lets you get an emblem that says you may cast instances and sorceries from your graveyard, which is really good in this deck. So
Mm-hmm.
this is where you have to exile them after, but you can replay stuff, which is really fun. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. I like her.
So the other thing that this deck does well already is it creates tokens, it helps you draw cards, it does all those types of things, but it and there is definitely on par removal in there, but there's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of direct damage to any
Mm-hmm.
target. And you want to win the game somehow and not
Mm-hmm.
just through swinging with tokens. So if you need your tokens to sacrifice, then how are you going to do damage? So we thought Jaya's Immolating Inferno would be a great one. It's an X mana cost, so it has some versatility for 2. It is a legendary sorcery, but whatever. Jaya's Immolating Inferno deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. So that can be people if you need to uh, target people, and it's up to 3 targets. So you can choose one target and put all of that damage on the one
Mm-hmm.
target, or split it up if you need to. So yeah, it just gives some versatility there, as well as if you get to copy it, now you're doing even more damage, and this could potentially solve that. How do I actually win this game?
Yeah. Big Score is for 3 and a red. This one is a little instant that will, again, help you get more cards in your hand and mana ramp. So that might help a lot with this one. You can, as an additional cost to cast this spell, you discard a card. No big deal because you're going to use them again later, anyways. Draw 2
Mm-hmm.
cards and create 2 treasure tokens. So it's a really, really good card for a common, especially,
Yeah,
I think.
definitely. And we talked about this deck not having quite enough creatures, so we wanted to put
Mm-hmm.
in some creatures. We thought you should put in some creatures to take advantage of instants and sorceries. So Dragon's Rage Channeler is one that you see a lot on Arena and Historic and in Pioneer, but they would go well in this deck as well. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to surveil, so you're constantly looking at the top card of your
Mm-hmm.
library, deciding if you want to keep that card on top or put it in your graveyard if you don't need that card. It does have Delirium. So as long as there are
Mm-hmm.
4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Dragon Raider's Channeler gets +2/+2 and has flying. So now it's a 3/3 with flying and attacks each combat if able. So
Yeah.
gets you some aggression, and hopefully they don't have a lot of flying blockers to deal with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Helping you finish off that opponent over there. This
Mm-hmm.
little guy too, the Sprite Dragon, he will help you do that as well. A little 1/1 for a blue and a red fairy dragon that has flying and haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a counter on this guy. He can get big quickly, and you've got a flyer.
Yeah. Another one we talked about that's on like honorable mention next to this guy is like Crackling Drake, which takes
Mm-hmm.
advantage of the number of instances of sorceries in your graveyard. But anyway, Death but
Yeah.
Dragons for 4 and 2, 2 red. Great
Mm-hmm.
card, just because of the name and the artwork. But anyways, it is a sorcery that each player, other than target player, creates a 5/5 dragon. Create creature token with flying. Now they don't have goaded; they can attack you. So make sure you know who your friends actually are. But you can basically you know they're going to choose me, so everyone except Leslie gets a dragon.
I wouldn't do that to you, Leslie.
No, but everyone else would. Chat would.
Brass's Bounty. This is a card I love to copy. It's for 6 and a red, a sorcery that for each land you control, you create a treasure token. This can be nuts.
Oh, Crackling Drake is in here.
There's
I'm just
Crackling
gonna,
Drake right there.
because I talked about it, I'm just gonna move it here.
Sure.
So Crackling
Finish him
Drake,
up.
I mentioned earlier, because I thought we didn't put it in here, but we did. So for
We
2
did.
blue and
We're
2
so smart.
red, it's a star 4 or X4. It's flying, and its power is equal to the total number of instants and sorceries you own in exile and in your graveyard. So it doesn't matter that you exiled them for something else, it still counts those things, which is why this one is really great.
Yes.
It enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So it has like another little benefit. And the 4 but is nothing to laugh at. It's a nice
No.
little blocker.
Crush of Tentacles is a sorcery. I really like this one too. It's for 4 and 2 blue. That says return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. If Crush of Tentacles surge cost was paid, you get to put an 8/8 blue octopus creature token onto the battlefield. So it the surge cost is for 3 and is it 3 and 2 blue? Yeah, so it's cheaper. Yeah, and you get to make a octopus. Get rid of everybody's stuff, and you have a big octopus doing its job.
So Stormwing Entity is another one that takes advantage of your instants and sorceries. This is actually a great card for this deck. I like it a lot because it has this little benefit to it. So first of all, it is a 5 mana cost 3/3. However, it costs 2 colorless and 1 blue less to cast if you cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, which in this deck you're definitely going to do. So now this doesn't cost 5. This actually only costs 2. 2 for a 3/3 that has prowess, which gets you +1/+1 every time you cast an instant or sorcery. Now, copying instants and sorceries don't count as casting them, so that's something to remember. But you're going to make a whole bunch of land. You're going to make those treasures with Brass's Bounty. You're going to be able to cast tons of stuff and copy them. And hopefully this becomes really big in one turn and you can take care of someone. When it enters the battlefield, you also get to scry too. So much stuff on this card that's possible. It's a great card for this deck.
Murmuring Mystic is a really, really good card for this deck too. Again, because of how many instances and sorceries you're casting. It's for 3 and a blue, a 1/5, which doesn't seem like much, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get to make a little blue birdie token. It's amazing how useful those little birds can be.
Yeah.
Especially in a deck like this.
And Mind's Desire for 4 and 2 blue. This one allows you to shuffle your library, then exile the top card of your library until the end of turn. You may play that card without paying its mana cost. Sometimes you just need a shuffle. The reason we put this one in here, though, is because the other thing you might want to take advantage of is Storm. So what the heck is Storm? So this card has Storm. When you cast this spell, you copy it for each spell cast before this turn. So if you've already cast 4 spells, you copy it 4 times. So if you're casting a bunch of instant sorceries, Storm is another great thing to put into these decks.
Spreading Insurrection, it's for 4 and a red, a sorcery that says gain control of target creature you don't control until end of turn. Untap the creature, it gains haste until end of turn. This is another Storm kind of card. Steal their stuff, sacrifice it, swing with it, whatever, both of those things. And yeah, it's a mean one. And you get Storm works awesome in this case.
And then we have Docent Perfection, which is a double-sided card. It has flying, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get a 1/1 blue human wizard creature token onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 3 or more wizards, you can transform Docent of Perfection into a 6/5, which also has flying. Wizards you control now have +2/+1. Remember, there was a card up in there that created wizards.
Quite a few wizards.
As well.
There's lots of wizards,
so,
yeah.
You might as well, and there's lots of wizards in this deck. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to create another 1/1 blue wizard creature token onto the battlefield. So it's going to keep creating wizards. It buffs them up, which allows you to use them for the casualty because 1/1s aren't as good. So that's the only thing that I would say about the Murmuring Mystic in this one. But once they're buffed up, then you can use them for the casualty and you just keep creating them. So, and all you have to do is cast more instants and sorceries to do that. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure, just to reiterate, I think you can, if it's casualty 2 and you have 2 1/1s, you could sacrifice the 2 1/1s, but you're sacrificing 2 creatures. But that's okay because you have a card like Bastion of Remembrance out that says whenever, or when it enters the battlefield, you get to create a 1/1, but that's nice. But whenever a creature you control dies, which is going to be a lot, you gain, your opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So this card is going to help you do something with all that death.
And
we love this card.
Each opponent.
We love it.
Yeah, I just added that really quick because I was like, we need.
She's brilliant. I don't know why we.
You know that. The other one is Blood Artist. Of course, that's another one that whenever target player or whenever another creature dies. Now this is another creature, so including theirs, correct? Target player
Mm-hmm.
loses 1 life and you gain
Yes.
1 life. So it's only one target. It's not each. It's not quite as good as Bastion of Remembrance. So if you're choosing between the two to put in this deck, I would probably choose Bastion of Remembrance, but Blood Artist is a
Mm-hmm.
nice little creature as well. Easier to get rid of a creature though than it is to get rid of an enchantment. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Black has some really, really good drain, life gain, life drain kinds of things. So that might be something to consider for this deck as well. Because you
yeah.
need some way to kill your opponents,
Yeah,
right?
and
So
that's the big thing about this deck is like, yeah, there's lots of kind of fun synergy, and
lots of
yeah,
stuff.
you might win, but you want to make it so that you're confident that you have some good win conditions in there. And I
Uh-huh.
don't think that it has it as is. I think that you need to use
Yeah.
some of those tweaks, not again, not all of them, but some of them. So
Yeah.
at any rate, that's it for this time. Thank you so much for watching. We are available on YouTube and Twitch. Also, if you feel you can feel free to contact us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear how you would tweak this deck, so definitely put that in the comments down below or send us a message. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time, and in the meantime,
Tap those magic cards and have fun doing it.
bye
Bye.
guys.